Coming up next on Flightline News, we'll take a quick look at some important changes made to the BTS and get ready for some tips on what you can do to make your check ride go as smoothly as possible. Flightline News starts right now. Welcome to this special edition of Flightline News. I'm Bob Thomas. As the semester winds down, the check rides begin to ramp up, and the whole process can seem a bit overwhelming and nerve-wracking. To make things a little easier on you, Flightline News takes an in-depth look at the practical test and some recent changes made by the FAA. When we use the word check ride, remember we mean the end-of-course test. This shouldn't be confused with the proficiency assessments or the pre-STOLO stage check. Recently, the FAA revised many of the practical test standards, or PTS, to include new revisions and testing requirements. The biggest changes that occurred were the addition of the accelerated stall maneuver and a task about runway incursion avoidance. The FAA moved runway incursion avoidance from the special emphasis areas into something that must be tested by all examiners on every check ride. On December 1, 2012, the FAA updated the Flight Instructor Airplane PTS to match the section on fundamentals of instructing found in the current Aviation Instructor's Handbook.
So things that were changed were now the chronological order of the FOI area of operation was changed, and now they start from human behavior and they go all the way out to flight instructor responsibilities. They changed critique and evaluation into the new code task assessment, which matches the Aviation Instructor's Handbook. They also went ahead and added two tasks. One, which is flight instructor responsibilities, and professionalism. And the other one, which is risk management.
The FAA also added a new task where the instructor applicant must teach the subject of runway incursion avoidance. In fact, runway incursion avoidance must be taught on every new flight instructor rating check ride you take. Failing a check ride isn't fun, but it does happen to the best of us. To give you a better idea of some student mistakes, here's a list of some of the common failure items that occur on the practical tests. For the private pilot check ride, one of the bigger trouble spots during the oral is the cross-country flight planning section. So make sure you take a moment to double-check your numbers before the oral. You might even want to ask your instructor to take a quick peek at them too. In the instrument course, weather information and lost communication procedures have given some people a headache. During the FTD and flight portions, the partial panel non-precision approach and the circling approach were also some trouble. You might even want to do a few laps in the traffic pattern VFR just for some landings practice before the flight. In the commercial check ride, the common failed items have been the short field takeoff and short field landing, along with the power off 180. On multi-engine check rides, the single engine approach and landing and the single engine instrument approach are some areas you should focus on. On the CFI check ride, logbook entries and endorsements during the oral, so be sure to bring all your references with you to help you out, and the power off 180 and forward slip the landing in flight. And finally, on the double-I check ride, teaching IFR cross-country flight planning and flying a circling approach as well as holding procedures have given some people some trouble. Check rides can seem to be a scary thing, especially if you've never taken one before. Here are some training managers and instructors with some tips on how to get through the check ride.
The TCE that you are going to oral, fly, or sim with wants you to do well. It's important to them that our students perform well on the check rides. Their job is not to judge you as you go through the check ride. Their job is to evaluate you within the confines of the practical test standards. They are rooting for you just as much as your flight instructor is.
Check rides aren't fun. It is a test, it is an examination, and it's a special type of examination in as much as you put a lot of emotional effort into getting to that point.
I want to see how they perform, so I want to put them at ease so they can fly the airplane, so I can judge them and grade them on their performance. I want to see them do the best performance that they can. I know they're going to make mistakes on a check ride, but I want to see how they work their way out of them.
Number one thing is to be prepared. Okay, to be prepared, you have to know what your check ride is about, so make sure you're familiar with your PTS or practical test standard, what to expect on the check ride, what is considered satisfactory and unsatisfactory, and if you have any doubts, ask the questions to the check pilot.
Typically what I tell my students to do to study for their check ride is to refer to the study guide list that's recommended in your FAR aim. They have one for each section or each rating that you are doing. Another thing you can do to study for your check ride is put tabs on your FAR aim and any other references that you want to bring to your check ride. Some of the things you can do within those tabs is also go and highlight materials that are pertinent or apply that you can use for reference, because in your check ride you may bring anything that has the DOT or FAA emblem on there. So if you need to reference it, you can bring it and have it already tabbed out to show your check airman.
So one great way to study for your check ride is do the student workbook, review all your notes, and even if it takes to get you off of distractions like Facebook, deactivate your account until you finish your check ride. That would be a great advice.
Be thorough in your preparation and trying to think outside of the box and preparing with a scenario in mind, not just a rote set of answers or relaying information back to a direct question, but try to think in terms of scenarios and ask yourself and be well prepared from a scenario standpoint, and to be able to correlate the knowledge you have and provide a thorough answer to ensure that you have a complete understanding of the requirements at hand.
Prior to the check ride, be sure that you've gotten lots of rest the night before. Don't stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning trying to study or prep for a check ride. Honestly, the old adage, if you don't know it by now, you never will, typically holds true. Go to bed early, get a good night's rest, get up early, eat well, drink lots of water, because honestly, physical stress such as hunger and thirst can degrade your performance in the airplane. So be sure that you're well fed and well rested before you go into a check ride. You'll feel much better, and typically you'll perform much better as well. So take good care of yourself prior to going up for a check ride.
Come early, be prepared to go as soon as possible, and you know, make your go decision based on the best available information you have.
You know, check rides is a two-part for me. We have many instructors that are really good, but have never put a student through a check ride. So it would be good for an instructor to go and observe a TCE conduct a check ride. That could help tremendously that instructor train their student. The other part is students. Students should go and observe a check ride of the check ride that they're going to perform. That way they know what to expect, what kind of questions they're going to be asked. Maybe not the same questions, but questions that are alike, system questions, regulation questions, so they have an idea. Observe check rides, do as many as you can. I would suggest, I recommend you observe orals, 1 or 2 orals, and observe 1 or 2 flights.
I know that it's easy to be intimidated and nervous going into a check ride, but go in feeling confident that TCE wants you to do well almost as much as you want to do well.
Everybody's going to be a little nervous, but the key thing is, you know, if you know what the standards are and you do your best, hopefully everything turns out well.
Just relax. Most of your classes are going to be over by the time it's check ride time for you. Most of the finals will be over for some of you, so just take it easy. You don't have a whole lot going on. Go home, relax a little bit, read a book, read the news, whatever it is that you do to relax, and try to get some sleep so that when it's check ride time, you're well refreshed and you're all set to go when it's practical test time.
When you go up for check ride, it's important to be confident in your ability. You are eligible for check ride because you have been trained by some of the best flight instructors in the world.
But those that do well on all check rides, on tests, or anything that they do in life are the ones that are confident. And they got confident how? Because they were prepared, because they were consistent. And you know, give me the people that know they're going to do well on a test and get that confidence level up, and you'll pass about anything.
Many people try to rush through their elements in a check ride, and when one of the tips for passing a check ride would be simply be pilot in command. Take the time you need to set up for maneuvers. One of the things I've seen in my experience is simply rushing, trying to get the maneuver done too quickly, and usually that happens through the stress of a check ride. And just realize that it's a stressful time, accept that as reality, and take the time needed to properly set up for the maneuver before you begin the maneuver.
If you're in an oral and the evaluator or examiner asks you a question and you're really not sure of the answer or you don't understand the question, you can always say, "Hey Bob, could you rephrase that question, or could you ask in a different manner?" Okay. Or if you feel distracted on the flight by the question, you can go ahead and say, "Hey, I don't think right now this is the time to answer that, but I'll give you an answer as soon as we land or in a few minutes."
It's uncomfortable being evaluated on a one-on-one basis However, our check airmen are seasoned veterans, and you're not going to show them anything that they haven't seen before. You are not going to fly the airplane perfectly because you can't, all right? The check airman can't fly the airplane perfectly. If you make a mistake, fix the mistake. That is the biggest thing that you can do. Don't live with the air.
Right? If something goes wrong, if you're feeling like it's not going well, you're in an oral and you've answered a question incorrectly, you're in flight and you've maneuvered incorrectly. Maybe you busted an altitude or a heading, or you said something that you never have said before that you know is wrong. When that happens, stop and make a correction. The TCE, again, wants to see you do well, and they're very understanding if you recognize that you've made an error and correct for it. That shows good pilot skills in an oral and in an airplane, because that's what we're looking for you to do in the real world. Recognize that you've made a mistake and make that correction. It shows a pilot in command mentality and shows that you're ready to become the pilot that we all want to see you become.
My biggest advice is not to fail yourself. You may think that you've done something that really doesn't look very good at all. Once again, you haven't shown that gentleman or that lady anything that they've not seen before. Stay with the airplane, keep flying the airplane, keep making the decisions necessary in order to fly it as well as you possibly can.
It's very easy and very common on a check ride for a student to snowball into a failure. They've made one small mistake, they get frustrated with themselves, they're already stressed and tense, and they feel like they've failed immediately. That may not be the case. Recognize it, correct for it, and continue moving forward, again with that positive attitude. You're going to do very well on your check ride.
The check ride is something you have been preparing yourself for a semester or more. Think of it as one oral and one flight that's just a way for you to show someone new all the new skills and decision-making ability you've learned and developed, and how you can apply it to the aviation world. Everyone from the flight department is wishing you the best of luck. If you'd like to send us your comments or suggestions for future stories, send us an email at specialvfr@erau.edu. This is our last episode of Flightline News for the 2012 year. Our next episode will be in mid-January. We hope you enjoy the Flightline News. I'm Bob Thomas. Thanks for watching.